and today we're here in Bristol, outside the iconic Bristol Harbour. Let's take you 5,000 miles away, to the Gulf Stream, near Mexico. The Gulf Stream is a cycle of water currents that travel along the coast of North America to Europe. It functions via the warm and densely salinated waters along the coast of Mexico and travel northwards along the coast of North America and into Europe, displacing the cold and less salinated waters of the North Atlantic, causing this water to sink and flow towards the equator. This cycle carries the warm weather from the equatoria of the planet with it, and is the main reason why Europe has tame winters and warm summers. Now, how does this affect Bristol Harbour? As you can see, the water here is not frozen. That's because at this time of year, the average temperature of the Bristol Harbour runs between 8 to 4 degrees. This allows for great trade between different countries. However, if you look at this place here in Russia, which I cannot pronounce, the average temperature here is minus 19 to minus 11 degrees, which is a massive difference between there and Bristol Harbour. This is all to do with the Gulf Stream. Well, what is the point in this video? Mostly the Gulf Stream and the rest of European waters. Usually the Gulf Stream gets weaker and stronger over time. However, because of recent human intervention, the Gulf Stream has become weaker and weaker, leading to warmer and warmer temperatures in the waters. This has affected the global climate drastically. As well as this, the Gulf Stream has been affected by colder temperatures as well. This has led to being big ports like this and ones in Liverpool to freeze over. This has meant that trade is unacceptable in these places just because of how to get in there. This has not only affected the global climate, but as well as the economy. This has meant that colder water in the north has affected in the south. For example, in places like Rome, which rely on its natural ventilation systems, will be getting hotter and hotter and will no longer be habitable in time. We spoke to activist Sarah Jones about the effects of climate change. Here's what she said.
What would happen if no changes were made to stop climate change, would you say?
At the moment, if we've been following the COP processes in Glasgow before Christmas, it's all about trying to limit the rise in global temperatures. And I find it quite interesting when I realise that people often don't really have a sense of what will happen if, say, the world's temperature rises by, say, 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees. It sounds like it would make no difference at all. The figures, the numbers are so small. But actually, once you start looking into it a little bit more, for example, looking at the IPCC reports, you find out that even that tiny difference can make a huge difference in terms of what happens to the world. So, for example, if there was a 2-degree rise in global temperatures, you could have up to 457 million people who would be exposed to climate risks and vulnerable to poverty. So these are huge numbers and it can be difficult to get our heads around it. Also, 2-degree increase would mean that all of the world's coral reef pretty much would be gone, would be dead. But the problem as well is that when we talk about these numbers, we think that this sounds quite achievable. But actually, more recent research says that we're potentially going to see a rise of about 3.2 degrees. So you can imagine just, what a difference that might make, even though, again, the numbers are small. What I would encourage everyone to do is to take a really proactive approach towards educating themselves. So I would say to anyone, if you don't know what these temperature rises mean for animals, for humans, for the ocean, then do the research and find out. There are so many accessible websites, for example, from NASA, which will spell this out for you in terms that you'll be able to understand. And I would warn anyone, though, that it's quite depressing reading, actually.
How important in terms of world problems do you think climate change is?
I think that traditionally people have thought of climate change as something that just happens to the environment and that's got nothing to do with our lives. So, for example, that climate change is not the same thing as a humanitarian issue, like, say, famine or something like that. But there's increasing awareness that climate change is almost the overarching problem and global challenge that affects all the other challenges as well. So, for example, if you have people living subsistence lifestyles that are dependent on food production, once the climate starts changing, maybe there's drought or too much rain, then that can lead to famine as well. Or there may be, for example, increased dengue fever from the mosquitoes who are very happy that the climate is warming. And so then that becomes a health challenge, for example. So I think that climate change is the most kind of overarching issue, and it's called a wicked problem because it demands a response on all fronts as well.